And I'm really excited to introduce our presenters for the day, Grayson Anstis and Luca Strands. They are my co-workers, colleagues here over at the KYC LGBTQ Center. They are youth outreach workers and really amazing advocates for the community at such a young age, and really passionate about history and this topic in particular. So very excited for you all to hear from them. And I'm also really excited to introduce Illinois State House Representative for District 59, Representative Daniel Didich. And he is here to talk a little bit about the inclusive curriculum bill, which he voted in favor of and helped support and bring into existence. So with that being said, take it away, Representative Didich.
Well, thank you, Donna, for inviting me to participate in this today. I'm very happy to be here. Like Donna said, my name is Dan Didich. I'm a state representative for the 59th District in Illinois. That means I'm one of the 118 people who go down to Springfield each year and serve in the House of Representatives, voting on bills, debating bills, introducing bills, and doing what we can to improve public policy in the state of Illinois. In the context of LGBT issues, what we've found, and this is from listening to experts, listening to people who've had their lived experiences in the LGBT community, is that there's three main policy issues that still need significant changes in. The three of them are healthcare, criminal justice reform, and the third one, which I'm going to focus a little more on today, is in education. And the bill that we were able to successfully pass last year, and it was signed into law, which we were very excited about, is called the Inclusive Curriculum Bill. So what it does is it requires that before anybody in Illinois graduates from 8th grade, they included in their curriculum is information about the history and the contributions of LGBT people in the United States. This is very important and a very big accomplishment for a few different reasons. One is it'll, if as a lot of you I'm sure know, is being a middle schooler or a high schooler is not the easiest time to be a member of the LGBT community for a number of reasons. And it can be very, very useful for during the course of that education experience to be exposed to people who not only have made a significant contribution in the United States, but serve as very important and very impressive role models for people in the LGBT community. This is important for LGBT people, but it's also important for straight people as well, to make sure that they understand that they're living in a country that was built in large part by the accomplishments of the LGBT community. And that can have a very positive impact on a lot of people in a lot of different ways. So that was the bill that we passed last year. It passed with 60 votes in the House of Representatives, and that's exactly the number that it needed to pass. So we got it done by the skin of its teeth, but we got it passed. It was signed by the governor, and it's going into law this fall. So beginning of this upcoming school year, everybody before they graduate 8th grade will be exposed to curriculum that celebrates the accomplishments of the LGBT community, and it's something we're very excited about. So with that, I will be happy to kick it back to Donna for the next phase of this presentation. And thank you for having me again.
Thank you so much, Representative Didich. Likewise, it is so incredible to know that this is going to be going into effect and that you played that role in history for our LGBTQ youth, and like you said, for the heterosexual straight students as well. Could not have said it better myself. So with that, I'd like to introduce you all to Gray and Luca. They're going to give you a taste, a very nice taste, but a taste of the huge history that is LGBTQ plus history in the United States. So Gray and Luca, take it away.
Hi, I'm Gray. I go by he, him.
I'm Luca, and I use they, them pronouns.
And this is the important basics of LGBTQ plus history. As we said before, this is just a little bit of it, so there's a lot going into it. And a lot of this research is taken from a museum that we are starting to research to be able to build that about LGBTQ plus history. So I really hope that you guys like it. And if you do like it, there's going to be way more in the upcoming months. It is important to learn about history of LGBTQ plus people because they have played such an important role in American history and will continue to do so. The inclusive curriculum law, as Dan Didich said, signed by Governor J.B. Pritzker on August 9th, 2019, mandates that by the time students finish 8th grade, public schools must teach them about contributions to state and U.S. history made by lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people. Another reason that is important to know is because it will educate you about the struggles that LGBTQ people have faced up until this point and what LGBTQ people will continue to face. As we go through this presentation, you may also find that this history ties into history that you may already know.
This presentation will be divided into two parts, pre and post Stonewall. The Stonewall riots were a pivotal point in the LGBTQ plus history, so we will start with the events leading up to Stonewall. Some of the most important first include, in 1624, Richard Cornish was executed in Virginia for alleged homosexual acts with a servant. This is the first record of a person being executed for this in America. In 1670, Bayard Taylor publishes Joseph and His Friend, A Story of Pennsylvania, and the book is later deemed as the first gay novel in America. In 1886, Wei Hua, an accomplished Zuni two-spirit, meets President Cleveland, and the president doesn't even notice as the Zuni maiden was born male. And for those of you who don't know, being two-spirit is a very sacred thing in lots of Native cultures, basically meaning that you are neither boy nor girl or both or some combination. In 1947, Vice Versa, America's Gayest Magazine, is published as the first magazine in America written for lesbians by lesbians, specifically by Edith Ide under the pen name Lisa Benn.
So, for laws, proposed laws, and legal activity, we have in 1636, Reverend John Cotton includes sexual acts between women in the definition of sodomy and suggests that women also be put to death for sodomy. Sodomy is defined as sexual intercourse involving anal or oral copulation, but many religious leaders use the word to describe unnatural sexual acts, homosexual or not. This changed the definition of sodomy, which made it focus much more on homosexual tendencies instead of just focusing on anal/oral sex of any gender of any sexuality. In 1655, the Connecticut colony passes a law against sodomy between women as well as men, though nothing really comes of this law. Then in 1777, Thomas Jefferson proposes law to make sodomy punishable by mutilation instead of death, though this never officially becomes law. For context, the mutilation was castration for men, and for women, it was drilling at least a centimeter deep hole into the bridge of their nose. In 1917, U.S. immigration bans those with persons of abnormal sexual instincts from entering the United States. This means no gay immigrants in America, which led to people being deported if they were found out to be gay. This actually resulted in some people's deaths, like the example of Eva Kochever, a Jewish lesbian who was sent back to Germany from America when she was found to be leading a lesbian tea shop, and then ended up dying in Auschwitz. And then in 1962, Illinois becomes the first state to decriminalize homosexual contact between two consenting adults over the age of 18.
In 1875, for demonstrations, protests, and riots, in 1875, John Benet leads an all-woman gang of former prostitutes who swear off men and support themselves through shoplifting. This is seen as a huge uprising. Benet is then killed in their bed, sleeping with their lover by an angry pimp. There's also record of them both identifying as transgender male and cis female, so we use they them pronouns since it is easier and respectful. In 1951, the LGBT bar called the Black Cat Bar becomes a site of a protest by Pride due to police brutality, where patrons were often beaten by police and arrested for kissing a person of the same sex. In 1959, Cooper's Donuts was the site of a riot in which lesbians, transgender women, drag queens, and gay men, sparked by the severe police harassment, rioted in one of the first LGBTQ plus uprisings in the U.S. In 1965, homophile activists staged the first public picketing outside of the White House, the State Department, the Pentagon, and Independence Hall to protest the government discrimination against lesbians and gay men.
In 1780, a Native American Joya, a man living as a woman, and her husband visited a Spanish mission, and a priest says how common Joyas are in the local villages. In 1856, woman chief of the Crow Nation is killed on a peacemaking expedition and leaves behind 4 wives. In 1925, Ma Rainey is arrested in her house for hosting a lesbian party in Harlem. Ma Rainey is also considered one of the biggest figures in jazz history. In 1941, World War II has gay and lesbian people become a massive part for mobilization, transforming lesbian and gay life in America. And in 1942, working with psychiatrists, the military develops ways to identify and exclude gay men from the services. This is where the term gay witch hunt was started. In 1952, homosexuality is determined as a sociopathic personality disturbance by the American Psychiatric Association. In 1956, James Baldwin publishes male love story Giovanni's Room. In 1957, the American Civil Liberties Union declares homosexuality as a valid consideration in evaluating the risk factor in sensitive positions, and advises lesbians facing official discrimination to simply become heterosexual. In 1967, Craig Rodwell starts the homophile youth movement in neighborhoods. Homophile was a word used by homosexuals to describe themselves in a less sexual and taboo way, as phile meant love, which was way less risky to talk about, straight or not.
The significance of Stonewall. In 1916, the Stonewall riots.
1969.
In 1969, the Stonewall riots happened. By storm delivery, Marsha P. Johnson, Sylvia Rivera, and other LGBTQ plus activists staged a riot in response to the police brutality after police raided a gay bar in Stonewall Inn that night. Stonewall is seen as a pivotal point in the LGBTQ plus rights movement and is one of the biggest reasons why people can be openly gay. Marsha was said to have thrown the first brick. Storm was said to have thrown the first punch. The reason we are able to have Pride today is because of Black trans sex workers rioting against the police brutality at Stonewall. That is why this Pride Month is just as important, if not more important, than the others before it. This time we're just rewinding it.
Now for our second section, post-Stonewall. In 1976, Harvey Milk becomes the first openly gay non-incumbent elected in the United States and the first openly gay person elected to public office in California. In 1988, the first National Coming Out Day takes place on October 11th, 1 year after the Second National March on Washington. Also in 1988, the City College of San Francisco's governing board approves the first gay and lesbian studies department in the United States to start. And then in 1998, Tammy Baldwin is elected into Congress in Wisconsin, making her the first openly gay person to have a first-term seat in Congress. Then in 2010, Phyllis Frye becomes the first openly transgender judge appointed in the United States. And then in 2012, Kyrsten Sinema becomes the first openly bisexual person to be elected to Congress. In 2012 as well, Tammy Baldwin becomes the first openly gay senator to be elected. And then in 2016, Kate Brown becomes the United States' first openly bisexual person elected governor. In 2018, Andrea Jenkins is elected to represent the vice presidency and the 8th ward in the Minneapolis City Council, making her the first openly transgender African-American woman to be elected to public office in the United States. In 2019, Jared Polis becomes the first openly gay American governor, and then also in 2019, Pete Buttigieg becomes the first openly gay Democratic presidential candidate.
Going on to laws, bans, trials, bills, and other legal activities. In 1972, the Minnesota Supreme Court case Baker versus Nelson, the state rules that the exclusion of same-sex marriage does not violate the United States Constitution, and the United States Supreme Court dismisses an appeal. In 1975, the U.S. Civil Service Commission no longer excludes homosexuals from government employment. In 1978, Harvey Milk and Sally Miller Gerhardt fight to defeat Proposition 6, which would have banned gays and lesbians from teaching in public schools in California, and succeeded. In 1982, Wisconsin becomes the first state in the United States to pass a lesbian and gay civil rights bill, prohibiting sexuality-based bias in housing, employment, and public accommodations. In 1990, immigration laws against homosexuality are rescinded, but restrictions on people with HIV and AIDS remain. In 1991, after 8 years, Karen Thompson is made legal guardian of her disabled lover, Sharon Kowalski, due to a car crash that left Kowalski speech impaired and paralyzed. This is a major victory for lesbian and gay couples in America. Also in 1991, in Bayer versus Mike, it is argued that the banning of same-sex marriage went against the Hawaii Constitution, though the Supreme Court of Hawaii dismissed the case in 1999. In 1993, Minnesota state legislator passes the first statewide ban of discrimination against transgender people. In 1993, Don't Ask, Don't Tell becomes U.S. military law, which includes that persons who demonstrate a propensity or intent to engage in homosexual acts are an unacceptable risk for inclusion in the U.S. military, and gay witch hunts begin.
Is for more laws, bans, trials, bills, and other legal activities. We have in 1996, the Supreme Court takes down Colorado's Amendment 2 that stated protections for lesbian and gay people against discrimination were special rights and therefore should be denied. Justice Anthony Kennedy stated that we find nothing special in the protections Amendment 2 withholds. These protections constitute ordinary civil life in a free society. In 1999, domestic partnerships are legalized in California, making them the first state to legally recognize same-sex relationships. In 2000, Vermont announces that they legally recognize civil unions between same-sex couples, stating couples would be entitled to the same benefits, privileges, and responsibilities as spouses, making Vermont the first state to recognize civil unions between same-sex couples in America. In 2003, the U.S. Supreme Court states that sodomy laws are unconstitutional in the U.S. after the case of Lawrence versus Texas. Justice Anthony Kennedy says liberty presumes an autonomy of self that includes freedom of thought, belief, expression, and certain intimate conduct. In 2004, Gavin Newsom allowed City Hall to grant marriage licenses to same-sex couples in California, though all same-sex marriages done in 2004 in California were eventually annulled. In 2009, President Barack Obama reverses Bush administration policy and finally decriminalizes homosexuality.
Continuing, in 2009, Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act is signed by Obama, adding gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, and disability to the federal hate crimes law. In 2010, Obama includes gender identity to the classes protected against discrimination under the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. In 2010, Obama repeals the Don't Ask, Don't Tell Act, and in 2011, the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy is officially ended. In 2015, due to Pavin versus Smith, no states can treat same-sex couples differently when it comes to issuing birth certificates. As well as in 2015, same-sex marriage is legalized in all 50 states. In 2018, openly transgender people are allowed to join the military, but in 2019, the Trump-Pence transgender military ban is implemented. In 2004, Massachusetts became the first state to legalize same-sex marriage, with a few other New England states following suit. California legalized it in 2008, and other than that, most states that did legalize same-sex marriage before the federal government did so in 2013 to 2014, Illinois being one of those states.
Now we're going to demonstrations, protests, and riots. In 1979, the White Night riots took place after Dan White's sentence for assassinating both San Francisco Mayor George Moscone and Harvey Milk was the lightest possible conviction for his actions, charging him with voluntary manslaughter. The riots were the most violent acts of protest by the LGBTQ community since Stonewall. Immediately after the riot, police raided a gay bar in retaliation and brutalized the patrons there. In 1979, the first March on Washington for lesbians and gay rights took place by a lesbian group called the Salsa Soul Sisters, and over 100,000 people attended. And then in 1993, the third National March on Washington for gay and lesbian rights is held and has over 1 million people marching.
For organizations, conferences, monuments, movements, and more, in 1971, in response to the sexism of the North Conference of Homophile Organizations, a lesbian group forms the Furies, pushing for lesbian separatism. In 1977, a Bostonian black lesbian feminist organization called the Combahee River Collective is formed. In 1980, becoming visible, the first Black Lesbian Conference is held at the Women's Building. In 1981, the Kitchen Table, Women of Color Press, founded by Barbara Smith, Sherry Moraga, Audre Lorde, Hattie Gossett, and Myrna Bain, begins in New York City. In 1983, GLAAD, a U.S. non-governmental media monitoring organization that promotes the image of LGBT people in the media, is formed in New York City to protest defamatory and sensationalized AIDS coverage by the New York Post. In 1996, Kelly Peterson's Gay Straight Alliance at East High School in Utah is deemed non-curricular by the school board, and the school board then bans all non-curricular clubs from joining in order to keep the group from meeting.
For more organizations, conferences, monuments, movements, and more, in 1996, in a response to a class assignment about nonviolent protests, students at the University of Virginia organized First Day of Silence. Day of Silence, if anybody doesn't know, is a day mostly done in schools, though can be done at work and other places, where people take a vow of silence for the day to bring to light the bullying and the harassment that LGBTQ people face in schools and outside of school. In 1999, Transgender Day of Remembrance is founded by Gwendolyn Ann Smith on November 20th. In 2009, Obama declares June to be LGBT Pride Month and continued this throughout 2015. In 2015, Philadelphia becomes the first county government in the U.S. to raise the transgender pride flag. And then in 2016, Stonewall National Monument is opened and is the first U.S. national monument to honor LGBT rights.
For other important events, in 1974, the disco scene introduces gay culture into the mainstream. In 1978, Harvey Milk, a gay San Francisco city supervisor, along with Mayor George Moscone, are assassinated in City Hall by former supervisor and opponent Dan White. In 1980, transgender people are classified as having gender identity disorder by the American Psychiatric Association. In 1981, GRID, or gay-related immune deficiency, is identified, and later called AIDS, or acquired immune deficiency syndrome. In 1985, Rock Hudson, a teen heartthrob, tells the world that he has AIDS, providing awareness about the epidemic. In 1989, the rainbow flag gets national attention after John Stout sues his landlords for attempting to prohibit him from displaying the flags from his apartment balcony. In 1993, Brandon Tina, an FTM youth, is raped and murdered in Nebraska, and the story of transgender discrimination and violence inspires the award-winning film Boys Don't Cry. In 1994, fear of persecution due to sexual orientation became ground for asylum. In 1998, Matthew Shepard is brutally killed in Wyoming, which gains the national attention and inspires the award-winning play The Laramie Project. In 1998, again, Rita Hester, a transgender African-American woman, is murdered and inspires the web project Remembering Our Dead and the Transgender Day of Remembrance. In 1999, the transgender pride flag is created by Monica Helms. In 2008, transgender woman Letitia Green is shot and killed by a man who thought she was gay. In 2011, the U.S. issues a non-binding declaration in favor of gay rights. And in 2013, Obama calls for full equality in his second inaugural address. In 2013 as well, the DSM-5 eliminates the term gender identity disorder and replaces it with gender dysphoria in order to stop stigmatizing transgender people. For more events, there is 2015, the White House announces they opened a gender-neutral bathroom. Also in 2015, Obama pledges to advocate for a ban on conversion therapy. And in 2015, Supreme Court begins to hear arguments on the freedom to marry. This was obviously right before they legalized gay marriage in all 50 states. And then in 2016, a terrorist attack inside Pulse, a gay nightclub in Florida, kills 49 people and injures 53 others. There is so much more. There's so much more history, so many more people and organizations and protests and laws. If you would like to know more, you're in luck, as there is a digital LGBTQ plus history museum we are creating right now. Please stay tuned for dates and details in the upcoming months.
Okay, so I really hope you guys are paying attention because we're about to go to a Kahoot. While we set that up, Donna's going to take a few questions. Keep in mind, whoever wins first will win $30. Whoever gets second wins 20, and whoever wins third gets 10. You're going to be going to kahoot.it, and then I'll be casting the code up for you to be able to join.
Thank you so much, Grand Luca. That was fantastic. Again, second time seeing it, and I still learned something new. So looks like we got some of our friends on this call too, which is awesome. Just want to open it up that you can either unmute yourself and speak, ask a question, or put it in the chat box.
I think that like the weirdest thing for me researching, especially for this, trying to find like the most like pivotal points, I think that some stuff in like times are really weird. Like a lot of people would think that sodomy, something that people don't even really talk about now, was only decriminalized in 2003. A lot of people think it was in like the 80s or the 70s or the 60s, and I was alive when it was decriminalized. And then it's like there's a lot of things that are really weird, like gay immigration bans weren't even rescinded until the 90s, and HIV and AIDS immigration bans still exist, which means that they still can ban gay people if they have the suspicion that they have HIV or AIDS. So there's still even things like that going on, which is really crazy to think about, considering the immigration ban was made in 1917 and it's still going on in 2020.
That's another point. I think that really struck me again this time is that how could we expect to undo centuries of legal work in the course of like 20 years? And that is like why the inclusive curriculum bill is such a big deal, and what you guys are doing as well, the work that y'all are doing as well.
Okay, so
13 questions.
What year are sodomy laws deemed unconstitutional? Yep, so it was 2003. It was actually really recent.
Crazy, man.
When was the definition of sodomy changed? The 1600s.
So it was changed by Reverend John Cotton to include women-on-women contact. Why did the White Night riots take place? So it was that Dan White's sentence was too light for killing Harvey Milk. He also killed the governor and was given the lightest sentence possible.
What was the original acronym for AIDS? It was GRID.
What month does National Coming Out Day take place? So it was October.
How many people were killed in the Pulse nightclub massacre?
Okay, so it was 49, and then 53 people were injured.
Where did the homophile activists picket in 1965?
So it was all of the above, which was the White House, the Pentagon, the State Department, and the Independence Hall. Who declared June Pride Month? So it was Barack Obama in 2009.
True or false? Homosexuality was deemed a sociopathic personality disturbance in 1952. That was true.
Who is rumored as throwing the first brick at Stonewall? So it was Marsha P. Johnson. Storm did throw the first punch, and then Harvey Milk wasn't present.
What year did Don't Ask, Don't Tell officially end?
Yep, it was 2011, and it was supposed, or like Obama started the process of ending it in 2010, and then it was officially ended in 2011.
What was the name of America's first gay magazine?
So it was Vice Versa, America's gayest magazine.
Who signed the Illinois Inclusive Curriculum Law in 2019?
So what's JB? Okay, are you ready?
Third place.
Birthday boy.
Hey.
Second place, Nicole. And first place,
It's got to be K, right?
okay.
Yay.
So
One of the questions that we got was, what are you hoping? I know y'all graduated, but what do you all hope is going to be taught in, or what do you recommend LGBTQ history lessons to be conducted in classrooms? Let me try one more time. How do you recommend LGBTQ history lessons be conducted in classrooms? And yeah, we'll start there.
I feel like LGBTQ history is best taught in like either its own focus or just completely integrated into everything. So either people just paying attention to it and being like, okay, cool, we're gonna have a unit on this, and I hope eventually it will be able to be so integrated into normal history that it won't be like a whole thing. Because I remember taking multicultural studies in high school and taking women's studies in high school, and I just sort of felt like those things should be included in everything instead of just like, oh, you get one unit on it, or you can elect to take this class that only 20 people take in the entire school to learn about. And I feel like this country was built by people of color and LGBT people, and I feel like the erasure of them is sometimes really upsetting.
What do you all feel like would have been helpful for you to learn about when you were in, like, let's say, middle school?
I've always been a really big advocate for LGBTQ inclusive sex ed. I remember writing my 8th grade final essay about including that, and I got in a lot of trouble for it. But I think that teaching kids about inclusion at an earlier age would have made it a lot easier. And I also speak on behalf of Congressman Raja for his anti-bullying bill. And I feel like while I'm happy to do it, I wouldn't have the stories that I have if LGBTQ history had been taught. But it's one of those bittersweet things, because it's like, it sucks to be considered almost a sob story because I was so badly bullied for being LGBTQ. But at the same time, I understand people's fears of it. I think the more that we educate, the less people will fear it, because people fear the unknown. And if it's no longer unknown, then it's not as scary.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you both so much for sharing all the information that you did. We are now approaching the end of our session, but I got your emails, winners, so we'll definitely be contacting you with that. Feel free to send questions that you have to donnab@kennethyoung.org, and Gray and Luca will get those as well. So even if you just want to send them some praise, you know where to go. So we will see you all